Oh, hello and good afternoon. It's actually morning here, but I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. This is one of my connected interview series. As you know, I bring on a ton of women that have the same support system as we do, the same mindset, love natural healing, natural health, women and children. And I found this amazing woman in a coffee shop. Actually, she came here to Idaho about a year ago, I believe, was well integrated in the birthing community in California for years and years, and came here to share with us her amazing talents and abilities, her love for women, her love for birth and postpartum. And she's got some really cool things that she does, some amazing stuff that she offers. Um, I have been dealing with women and birth. And as you know, we talk a lot about having a safe birth. And this is things that I was like, oh, just mind blowing. Like, this is so cool that you do this stuff to set women up for success. So this is Megan Doyle of Intuitive Womb. And she's got an office in Nampa, but you're kind of a traveler, right? You're in the Treasure Valley.
Yes.
So she's got some amazing things that I want her to share with you and how she supports women and birth and postpartum, which I find very important. And some of the things that her and I had chatted about was just support that's needed postpartum. And her take was, you set them up from success from the beginning. So we aren't having issues postpartum. And I thought, well, that's a genius thing to duh. That's what we're about. So, Megan, why don't you just introduce yourself and let them know some of the things that you and I had chatted about and the services that you offer, because there's a lot and it's really neat.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Christy.
You're welcome.
So I have been a massage therapist for many years, but I have recently focused much more on postpartum and also even before birth into the fertility aspect of care. And I offer a class, speaking of preparation, that really helps you prepare for the postpartum time. And it's much more than, okay, you need this supply and you need to do this and you need to cover these bases. It's really, what does the physiology say about how you need to heal, what support you need, and really going into nutrition and going into the nervous system and your daily experiences, how that affects your healing and affects you coming into motherhood, whether it's your first time or your 10th time. And really diving into a lot of those topics. The body work, there around the world, traditionally, there are commonalities in the body work that women receive after birth. And so I offer a lot of those services that really nurture the body postpartum. And in this class, we talk about all of those things, and we really talk about community and how you can create that community, fortify that community so that you are not alone postpartum. We have way too many women alone with babies for hours and hours a day. And that is not something I want to normalize. I really like the aspect of this idea of 2 layers of support. So the embryo has 2 layers of support to it. And I take that concept outward into the postpartum time. So baby needs 2 layers of support, 2 parents or 2 caregivers. Mother needs 2 layers of support. Partner needs 2 layers of support. So it's really building out from that center so that everyone can thrive, because I know very, very few families that really feel like they're thriving and healthy and healing while postpartum. It's usually a struggle. And
Yes.
so I'm here to shift that as much as possible. And so some of my offerings postpartum are steaming. I do vaginal steaming once bleeding stops. I do sitz bath. I do a bone closing. I do moxibustion over the lower abdomen. I do belly binding, which is really important very soon after delivery. And of course, massage. But all of these other offerings really are the complete package for healing and care.
They are beautiful things that I had just never even heard about before either. So I'm loving that you're bringing this here. And there's not a lot of people doing this, right? No.
No. So I'm the only provider with this specific training who does all of these services in Idaho. I know there are doulas and there are people around who do belly binding, and there are people who know about steaming, and people, obviously moxibustion comes from acupuncture. And so there are definitely people doing those things. But this specific training, I'm actually the only one in Idaho. And then the fertility work that I do, which is really encompasses all of women's health, and is appropriate about 6 weeks postpartum, to really bring all the organs back into alignment to make sure that your first cycle postpartum is wonderful. And to make sure you're healing in those areas, the uterus is in its proper location, blood flow, all of the functions are optimal.
Yes.
And that, I think there are 4 of us in Idaho. So
Really?
a lot of what I do, not very many people know about. So I'm so grateful that you're sharing.
Yes, and that, I mean, this is available because I don't think women know about it. I didn't know about the bone closures, and we're talking about in our office a lot. Movement is life. Like, we need movement. We need movement everywhere. And now we've opened up to birth or given birth, and things have moved. And like you talked about, the intervention, the body is often in shock. It didn't go through the process on its own. So now it doesn't know how to fully close, how to heal appropriately. And now there's a lot of women that talk about, like, oh man, I've got a uterus that's not working well. It's maybe sitting on my bladder, like you and I talked about, movement in the rectum. There's all sorts of things that happen. And then we think we have to struggle with it. We're like, oh man, just darn that baby, cough and sneeze, and I need an extra pair of pants. All the things that women think we have to live with.
Yes.
And we look at those misconceptions as well in chiropractic to say, just because you are getting older doesn't mean you have to lose your life. Your life and your quality of life, it doesn't have to go downhill. Same thing with having children. So to have this kind of support is incredible.
Yeah.
Explain to them, well, actually, maybe I'll tell them about your class really quickly as well, that looking at the window of 20 to 30 weeks is ideal for a setup for success, which I thought was really a beautiful thing, because there is a lot of frantic, I don't even know if I want to use the word franticness towards the end of pregnancy, of like, I'm preparing for the baby, I got to do this, I've got to make sure my toddler's taken care of, or whatever else is on your mind, and make sure you got enough diapers and all the things. And usually I say, if you've got a diaper and a boob, you're good to go. But often that's not the case, at least in Western civilization. So 20 to 30 weeks ideal setup. And then having that class, and then postpartum care as well, which is such a beautiful tie-in. I really love that. I know you and I had talked about this as well, of even, instead of having the baby shower, couldn't think of that word. Why don't you have support afterwards? So maybe just explain to them that process and how you put all those pieces together to set them up for success.
Yeah. And I'll segue this way. So you mentioned getting all the things together for postpartum, but you forget about yourself. How important is your own care? And yes, those things are important. You have to know, what your childcare looks like. You do need some diapers, but think about the list you get from, going for your baby registry. It's like so many things that you may or may not need.
Yes.
And if you need them, you can get them later. That's very true. But you really can't, once you're in the postpartum time, it can be too late to plan the rest of your care and really get off to a good start. And so it's really about prioritizing your care. And I see that as the big picture, the ripple out, because, we tend to have a birth experience like our own birth, to parent like we were parented, those kinds of things. So I think about, how will the people around you, including older children or the baby that you just had hearing stories, see that time? Are they going to hear stories about mom being taken care of? If they are, then they'll remember that somewhere in there, and they will feel like that's what's appropriate for them to do when they become a mother. So I see the really big picture of how can we shift this culturally? And it starts with each family prioritizing that care right out the gate. And you're right, the baby shower, what if we gathered together and helped the mother overcome some fear she has about birth, or process some other things that are coming up for her, and make a bunch of meals. It's the things that are really going to support that family and that new mother are very different from playing a game. And that sounds harsh, to say don't play games and don't have fun, but it's serious, and you can still have fun. Of course, laughter is great medicine. Absolutely. But I feel like we're spending time and we're spending money on things that aren't serving us postpartum and will not serve society as a whole, because we don't come to expect the care that's required. And I think that we should.
Yes, and very reactive in birth. Like you were talking about, postpartum, it could be too late. And it is a lot of reactive care of like, oh, maybe something is offered during the birth that you didn't know was going to be offered, or you didn't know was going to happen, or maybe when birth is new to people, you didn't know you were going to experience it in that fashion. But really getting set up and feeling connected to your body is way more important than making sure you got the right car seat. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. And knowing that you are going to have the support postpartum so that you can heal appropriately, so that you are going to produce breast milk if that's your choice, so that you can, have time to nurse and latch, instead of like, all right, well, my husband has these next 2 weeks off, so we should just induce now. Let's bring the baby out. He can be here for 2 weeks, and that's a thing. You hear that often and you're like, oh, wait, like, why are we thinking in this way, instead of really setting up that whole picture for success? Because that birth is going to be that baby's birth for the rest of their life. What that baby went through, what you went through, and the bond you have after, that's what's going to be there for the rest of your life. And other things, like a 2-week vacation can wait, or whatever else is going on. So really making sure that that's all, that, you got a nice bow on that, whether or not the expectations are going to be as clear as you think, or things are going to fall into place the way you want to. At least you've got that system of support. So tell me about that 2-layer of support. What does that look like for families? I don't think I've heard that analogy before.
Yeah. My teacher from this training talked about that. And it's really because the mother's job is to care for the baby. The baby's job is to be cared for. And the mother can't be the only support person for her partner, because she doesn't have that much to go around, right? Her focus is really the baby. So everyone else in the picture I view as taking care of the mother. Mother takes care of baby, everyone else takes care of mother. And the partner can't be relying, just as I said, on the mother to be her only support. That just doesn't fulfill everyone's needs. So just like in birth, where a doula's role is to support, the birthing mother and also the partner. I think that's a huge part of what doulas do. And I think it's the same postpartum. Everybody needs that extra layer, and you throw siblings in there, they need something too. So it goes back to that model that people talk about of those extended families, and that's really what supports that time really optimally is. And it could be made up of hired help and friends and family. You can make it up however you choose, but it needs to be there. Or what you have is you have mothers and families feeling alone and feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they're not well in their bodies, in their minds. And I think that really ripples out into society. If our memories of that time are so painful, then we're going to share those stories and they're going to be perpetuated.
Yeah.
And so I really like to work with people even before they're pregnant. I do the fertility work, or even if you're just getting your body ready for the pregnancy and you don't have challenges with fertility. Because once you have that connection to a provider, these first 4 classes are done prenatally. And then there's that period of time before you deliver. And then we have our 5th class postpartum to bring everybody back together in community and to support and celebrate and maybe share our birth stories and do some hands-on work. And it's really that completion of the rite of passage. It's like if you were to go to high school and graduate, but there was no ceremony. There was nothing to, sort of exclamation mark that time. And I see it so often that we go through that birth and then there's nothing to really close out the circle of that whole experience. It's a bigger experience than most people expect to transition into that role, into that your life is different, completely different from one second to the next, right? And so we need a place to process that, and we need time that unfolds in a supported way to do
That's
that.
awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So great. And I know one of the things that you had mentioned too when we were talking, because as a provider, sometimes we get people throughout their whole pregnancy or sometimes at the end. And when they do come back for a postpartum visit, and they're, explaining to us, I'm not, I don't have any motivation. I'm in tears. And you're like, okay, is this postpartum depression? Is this, all the way to postpartum psychosis? And of course, as practitioners, you're given a sheet that's like, what are check in the box? And we're very against that as well, because we don't ever like to put a label on someone. And I said, to Megan, what, do you provide that kind of postpartum support? And one of the things that she said was, well, most of the time it's a natural physiological response to their environment of what's going on. We hadn't set them up for success. And I was like, duh, how do you get them there? Because when they're left alone, they've got a toddler, they're nursing an infant, they're tired as all get out, they're trying to heal. They're going to be tired. They're going to be emotional. They're not going to feel well. And you're right. It is a natural physiological response. And instead of knowing you need support, if someone needs to be there for you, it's not, a lack of, hormones or an imbalance in the hormones. It's really just your natural response to what's going on. So that's very wise. Very wise.
Yeah. And it's also not this feeling of, well, now there's a problem and we recognize it and somebody needs to come in and fix you. It's like, you don't need fixing. There's nothing wrong with these mothers. That what's wrong, like you said, is the environment, is the support that's lacking, is, people lifting them up and, really honoring. There's not enough reverence and honoring of mothers. There's just a whole lot of unrealistic expectations put on them. You're supposed to keep up the house and take care of the kids and heal from this birth and process it all and, and do it with a smile on your face and be out the door doing your normal thing after a week. That's just so unrealistic. And how are people supposed to feel with that on their shoulders? That's a burden. So
I love that perspective. That. Yeah, for sure. That is so great. And there's so many ways that just even chatting with you to help, even if I get invited to a baby shower, to be like, maybe we should make meals, something to help support someone and pushing them in that direction to even be thinking about it, and not, like you said, normalize the fact that you're supposed to have this baby and get back on your feet and chase your toddlers and all the other things that is expected out of you. So I really appreciate, your work, your perspective on it, your wisdom there, and that you're here in Idaho. We need you. And she's been integrated into the birth world, because I know you've been meeting midwives and doulas and all of that. And I'll include the information in there, but being part of this class, which I think is so important. I'm assuming it's ongoing for you in the courses after you do.
I have various start dates. I just kind of do it periodically. So okay. Yeah. And it will just be with demand. I'm really after creating as many cohorts as possible to support everyone, because I am limiting it to that gestational range for a lot of reasons. And so I don't want someone who, maybe they just found out they're pregnant and they want to take the class and I don't have an offering, in that window yet, so I really, if people can reach out to me, if they're just interested, and I would love to be able to just gather groups and make sure that I can reach as many families as possible.
Yes, and we'll include your contact information as well, because I know that there's people that are on here and registered that are thinking about becoming pregnant or already had started trying. So I know talking to you and getting some just hands-on help in the, in those starting phases as well to be cared for throughout that process will be beautiful. So we'll put her information in there, intuitivewomb.com, right? Is where her website is, which is a really neat website, really cool services. And even people that are looking for help with their pelvic floor, help with soft tissue post-birth. We talked about scar tissue and that movement not moving well, to have set you up for success for your next birth. So there's a lot of amazing things she can do. Check that out. Make sure you're supported, taking care of yourself, moms, or if you are listening to this video and you know another mom that needs this, or a friend, and you can not only be their support, but you can let them know that this is a service for them while they're in these childbearing years and post childbearing years, that their bodies can get back into, as close as we can to prenatal shape. So I appreciate you so much for coming on. Thanks for coming to Idaho. We'll have your contact information on here, and you guys need to meet Megan. Thank you.
Thank you.